Good morning. I'm Russell Shaw. I'm happy to be talking here with Adriano and Clara. Let's get this started.
Of adversity. I mean, I think probably the hardest year that I had in my life was my first year living in DC. I got married in July 23rd, 2017. We moved in just about that time in 2016. So we're planning our wedding in Minnesota. And, I was far away from all my family. My dad had that in a year that was sort of bracketed around my wedding, but like my grandmother died in October. My grandfather died a couple months later, right before we got married. And they were the first people we told when we were engaged. So when we got engaged, we were living in Indiana and we went to stay with my grandparents, before going to my wife's family and then my family, because we were doing like a big Christmas thing. And we told my grandparents and we said, you're the first to know. Don't tell my parents because we want to tell them in person. And I know you're going to talk to them on Christmas. And my grandma stonewalled them the whole time, and I was the third grandkid to get married. And my grandparents were really excited about it. And my grandma got bladder cancer and she passed away, and they had been married for, God, at that point, 60, they got married in 1950, and that would have been 2017. So 67 years they were married. And so once she was gone, my grandpa wasn't gonna, they were a unit. And it was so those two tragedies, and then getting ready, and that was just a void when we got married. And then my dad had moderately unplanned heart surgery a couple months after that. So it was just this trying to get through all that while, having the wedding and getting married was really happy, but it was really hard to do it without my grandparents. And the fact that I was not able to be there when my grandma was in the hospital, because I couldn't get away from DC, because it was it happened really fast, and it was right around Thanksgiving when we have conferences, and how that run is, right? It was right around that time. And so not being able to be there for that, because I had just moved from Indiana. I lived 2 hours from them. I could have been there every single day if it was the year before, but I couldn't.
I've got a few in my head, but I think the one that's probably most relevant, and probably mostly only applies to me, everyone here, is getting my green card to come to the US was insanely complicated. Because like I said, I lived in China and I'm from Canada, so I had to apply as a Canadian getting a green card in China, which involved getting all sorts of documents that were incredibly difficult and ridiculous. I had to get criminal record checks from everywhere I've ever lived. And in China, they do it by city, not by country. So I had to deal with all of that and chase these things down in multiple different provinces. So that was really hard. I had to get things like my long form birth certificate, which they don't just give out in Canada, but we got it. And then I had to go to some tiny place on the far side of Beijing to get my fingerprints taken that's sent to Canada for that. I had to write down, I had to document every address I've had since I was 16 years old, including college places and places I lived for a very short time, which was really complicated. So the amount of times I lived at my dad's house or at the summer camp I worked at was a lot, and it just kept going and going and going. And you can't lie on these things, right? You have to be accurate. And there's some addresses I kind of forget. I rented a basement when I went to college, and I didn't remember the address, so I had to go on Google Maps and go in the street view trying to find the place. It's all these ridiculous things that just took so much time and effort. And then when I first got the visa, when I first went to my appointment, we were missing 1 year of criminal record checks because of a passport visa thing. So we had to go all over the city to try to find it and get it rushed. And then it was just this giant nightmare. and I didn't think I was going to get it in time for my flight, my visa, and we thought I'd have to change my flight or something like that. And my flight was on, like, I think on Monday, and Friday afternoon, my passport came with the visa in it. Like, it was literally like that. Like, we were out eating, and my wife got a phone call, and because she speaks Chinese, and was like, your husband's passport is here? What's happening? And we're like, we gotta go! Run, 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 run! So it was just like a lot of nonsense like that that just kept happening. I also, to get the green card, I'm sorry, this is all not linear. I had to also, like, prove I had a genuine marriage or genuine relationship, because they're always really worried about that. But I didn't quite understand. So when we went to the embassy, the people in front of us had like a list of all of their chat history all printed out and all of these pictures. And my wife and I looked at each other like, we didn't do that. Are we in trouble? But like, we had our daughter right there. So I think that like kind of gave us a slide. So there's a lot of that nonsense. And in China, to get the U.S. embassy doesn't like take passports there. You have to like drop it off at a bank. Like, there's a bank that will take it and they'll courier it over there for you. It's crazy, right? And the amount of times that I had to go there, and like, my Chinese is not that great, and I try to explain like, no, you have to take this and take it to the embassy. I have a form, but they're like, no, you're Canadian. You don't need a visa to go to America. Go, you're fine. It's like, no, dude, just take my things and go. So there was just like a lot of hoops to jump through. So many hoops. I know I'm missing a bunch. Just to come and live here while I was like already was married to an American with a child who's an American citizen. It was so much. And like, I'm Canadian, so I know I get it easier than a lot of other people from other countries do. It was just a crazy process. And I think to answer the second part of it, like, I just kind of had to.
So, I mean, I think as some people in the community know, but not a lot of the seniors, I guess. I've mentioned it, and I think some of you know, but I lost my first husband when I was 38. He had metastatic colon cancer, and our kids were 8, 6, and 3 at the time. And as you may imagine, this was not sort of part of my life plan. It's never part of anyone's life plan to lose someone. I think even if you have grandparents or someone who's older, it's always shocking when someone is not in your life anymore. And Sean's illness, my late husband Sean, his illness was very intense, as most deaths from cancer are. And it was really intense because I had tiny little kids, one who wasn't potty trained yet. And so I was dealing with the sort of regular chaos and madness that happens when you have little kids and you feel like you're pulled in a million directions. And also the intensity of being at a hospital and then dealing with the grief behind that after he died. And that was really intense. I was here at GDS. And I tried to keep working through his illness. I worked through a lot of it, sort of the fall of 2017. And then I had to stop working because I was sort of on and off in December when he was getting surgery, and then I was off in January, and he died in January.
I went to college my freshman and sophomore year, and I was sort of lost in trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. So I actually decided to take a gap year after my sophomore year to figure out like what direction do I want to go with. I wasn't sure what major, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I was provided a unique opportunity through a friend of my father's to go work on a cattle ranch in Australia. And so he's like, I have a friend who works at this who invested in this cattle ranch. It's literally in the middle of the outback Australia. And I was like, sure. So I got on a plane. I flew to Australia. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I was picked up at the airport and literally brought to this cattle ranch, and ended up spending like 2.5, 3 months working on a cattle ranch in Australia. And it was by far one of the hardest things I've ever done, because they put me on a horse day one. I'd never really ridden a horse. And I was like riding the cattle, I was branding the cattle and like cutting the horns, and it was literally they were just like, they didn't ask me if I knew how to do stuff. It was like, go do that. And I was like, all right, and I had to figure it out myself. So that was an incredibly hard experience, but it made me grow up super, like it helped me in life so much, realize that I could get through tough situations, because everyone I worked with on the cattle ranch, they were like the first American they'd ever met. They were I was like, it was really, truly thrown into it and asked to do things that I had never done before. And they weren't like teaching me how to do it. They were just saying, go do it. So figuring out how to make those things happen was an incredibly hard experience, but I think it made me realize I could do things, like I could get through it. And so after that experience, I sort of came back, and when I returned to college the next year, I took off, and I was like, things became so easy. What I used to think was hard was no longer hard, because I had done all these amazing things over there.
I actually think a lot about like what makes things hard. I find this a really interesting question. And I feel like my whole life I've had a wrong impression of it. Like, to my mind, what it means for something to be hard, or at least like my first impression of what it means for something to be hard, is like the feeling of like doing a really hard workout, sort of. And you're like, okay, I am like physically pushing myself, and it's a matter of like willing myself to do more than seems natural, desirable, possible, whatever. And so, like, I remember being in like middle school math classes, which were ridiculously easy, and I was like, I want this to be hard, but I don't think I actually knew what that meant. So as I've like moved through various hard things in life, whether that be like academically hard things or socially hard things or emotionally hard things or whatever, I feel like I'm interested in what does it mean for something to be hard, and I don't have a good answer to that question. So that's why I think answering this question of like the hardest thing I've been through is difficult. So here's my cop-out answer. Or it's not a cop-out, it's just, I don't know, whatever, my answer. Two sort of twin experiences, graduating high school and graduating college. And the year after each of those things. So I think, I don't know, maybe the fact that here I am back at GDS is further testament to the fact that I like really sort of enmeshing myself in a place and like getting fully involved in a particular world. And when you graduate from high school or you graduate from college, you are thrown unceremoniously, or maybe there is some ceremony, but whatever. You're thrown out of that world that seems to be like where all of your life is. Like your life is just totally upended in a way that I think a lot of people find really exciting, and in some ways it is, but to me it was like terrifying and emotionally difficult both times. And so I was like, I am totally happy in this world at, my senior year in GDS. And I was like, why would I ever want to leave that? Why would I want something different? But I didn't really have a say in the matter. I did consider trying to fail one of my classes so that I wouldn't get to graduate, but I realized that was a terrible idea, so I didn't do it. But so then I, got to college, and I was like very sort of unsure of like how to chart a new life. And it was like there were lots of fun things along the way, but all my friends were scattered. The normal routines of my life were gone. I liked DC a lot, and I was far away. My family was not there, whatever, you get the idea. And then, over the course of the 4 years, I moved past that, and I created in college sort of a similar, very different in the way it looked, but a similarly comfortable, similarly like, and I don't mean comfortable as in easy, like it was really exciting. Like every day felt like there was new exciting challenges, and I was like, this is great, and all my friends live within 2 blocks of me, and why would I ever want anything different? But then out I was again. And so for both of them, I think I just like embraced the novelty of whatever was before me. And like both of those were long periods of time when I was like pretty unhappy after having left the previous life. But my freshman year of college, eventually I think the thing that like really turned me around is telling myself the answer was always yes. So let's say like someone was like, oh, let's go to, some show or like a party or whatever it was, like, let's go do this thing. And I was like, oh, but I have to do my reading for class. No, the reading for class will get done. The answer is yes. Whatever someone proposes doing something that doesn't sound fun, maybe they're like, let's go to this lecture. I'm like, really? Do I want to go to a lecture? Yes, you want to go to the lecture. Always yes.
First thing that came to mind was an event. When my father passed away, my mother wanted me to do the eulogy, which I did. But it was like short notice, how are you going to figure this out? Not something I expected to do. And yeah, that was challenging to get through. But it was also like a confined, like, here's a thing that happens, it needs to happen by now, so it's done. To think about sort of the ongoing piece, I mean, there's that bigger picture, like, how do you teach in a COVID, post-COVID world? Like, anybody who's been in my class knows that I use the board a lot. It was like 2 years I didn't. So it was like that whole, all right, how do I do this well? Or the part with like, how do you interact with people who really just, you know, like behind the screen, whatever. Like, it was this very strange, like the social engagement part of teaching is important. Having that go away for several years, effectively in one way or other, was really a big deal.
So many years ago, for my summer camp, I'm the trip leader. Maybe about 100 people, 80 people, 100. It's a number of years ago, so I forget. And I had more hair than I have now. It's definitely younger. And we went to the circus. It was a trip to the circus. We had done the trip plenty of times before, and it was at these fairgrounds. We get about halfway through the circus, and a clown and the ringman, whatever they call him, came out and stopped the show, and everyone in the audience thought it was part of the show, and it was a joke, and it wasn't. And they stopped the show because we were in a severe weather warning, to the point they had to stop the show and had everybody leave not only the tent but the grounds, because we were a high-risk place. And now there is swarming happening around us, and people are panicking. And so I held my group up a little bit to keep them as a group, because it was young children, I should mention, kids. All of the children were under 11. I had staff with me, and there's a lot of details to the story. And we get moving. We're going to the bus, and there's torrential downpour. And there's lightning and thunder, and the children are scared. The children are, some of them are oblivious, and some of them are very scared. As we're getting the last adult on the bus, he, in effect, got struck by lightning. It turns out there was a couple of other factors that played into it, but he was really in what's called the ground out zone. He didn't get hit in the head with a bolt. But now, while I'm trying to care for these busloads of kids, I also, through roles I play for the American Red Cross, I was probably had the highest medical certification of anyone on the trip. I'm also now caring for this adult who is clear to me needs to go to a hospital. And so I worked with the local police to get him. But the first ambulance that came zoomed past us because someone else just got hit by lightning a little bit around. So all of this was upping it. Cutting out 2/3 of the story because it's really a bit lengthy. One, that individual in the end was fine. There was a journey, there was a road, but that person was fine. But there was also these parts about, we now had this 40-minute bus ride where I had to make the calls about when to tell the bus driver to pull over and stop driving because the roads were not passable versus keep going to get us to a safer place. And some children don't care, and some kids are a bit freaked out, and I have to distract and keep up spirits. And some of the adults in my care really were a bit disconcerted. And so it was about getting them home safe. But to shorten that part of the story, we got back to camp. The kids were all in a good place at that point. And then it was really more about sort of the toll it felt it took on me emotionally, because in the time I had to be the smiley poster child for the trip and help the kids get through. So that's it's not really the hardship that I kind of thought you were originally asking for, but it felt more along the lines of one I could share.
One was when I was on the Hill and getting ready to start law school, and I had been admitted into a good law school and saw people with these sort of career paths that seemed to make a lot of sense, and I had often made choices that just made sense in my life. And I remember a friend sort of saying, like, there is this incredibly strong gravitational pull towards following through with that. And, you know, my then girlfriend's mother, now mother-in-law, even sort of said to me, like, you're not going to go to Stanford Law School. Like, are you out of your mind? And for somebody who had often, like, you know, was an achiever and sort of did, you know, the next thing, to resist that and really say, I'm actually going to try to do something different and take a risk, was a really hard thing to do, because it lacked the sort of safety of a path that was clear to me to something that I really knew nothing about and had no idea how it was going to go. So that, you know, having been just like this and saying, all right, I'm going to take a leap and I'm going to take a turn and I don't know what's going to happen, that was really hard. Connected to that, you know, so that was 1994, and then, or 1997. No, 94. So then in 2009, when I took the leap and started here, two things were true. One is I was excited to take on this new opportunity, and I was terrified. I thought, like, is the job going to completely consume me? And I worried, can I do it? Like, did I have what it took to be successful in this job? And from the time, and the way that it works in head searches is, you know, they announced that I had gotten this job in November, and then I didn't start till July, right? That's how it works. Like, they, you know, announcement, so there's this long period of time where I'm still at my old school, and I wasn't head of school there. I was the middle school head and assistant head of school. And to give you a sense, it was a great school, but in the middle school that I was running, there were 150 students. And I went from running a middle school of 150 students to being head of a school where there were more teachers than that, right? So this was like a much bigger place, and I was in charge of the whole thing. And so taking that leap to do something that felt really bigger than anything I had done before, one of my mentors, who was the head of the school where I was working, Abington Friends School, said to me, he said, you know, taking a head of school job is like when, you know, a python swallows an elephant. And he said, and you're trying to swallow a pretty big elephant here, right? It's like, it's a lot to try to get your mouth around and digest. And that first year, I was walking around pretending I knew what I was doing. I would sit in finance committee meetings with trustees who were talking about things which I understood about 30% of. Mm-hmm. And I would ask a question or make a point because I was curious, etc. And forgetting that, like, everybody was waiting to hear what I had to say. I wasn't just another guy at the meeting, right? So I would sort of be like, oh, what about this or whatever? And everyone would turn towards me and I would be like, I don't actually understand, you know. So it was this fake it till you make it type thing. And I think people gave me some grace around that, and they were like, we believe in his capacity actually to be successful and learn this. But the inner struggle about, you know, being used to feeling really competent and taking on something that's actually much bigger than anything I had done before, and being able to trust that I could survive that and learn the skills and internalize that was terrifying and hard. But the other thing that I would say is when you take leaps like that, it's really hard, it's really disorienting, and that's where profound growth happens, right? If we do things that are just, we know how to do and we're successful, we don't grow as much. If we try things that are like much bigger than anything we've ever done before, or drop ourselves into new situations, we struggle, it's painful, there's self-doubt, there's like, what am I doing? And there's incredible growth. So like, as I look back, I was like, oh my God, I grew so much. At the time, I was, what did I do? How did I think that this was a good idea?
Ambiguity is hard. Every situation that I have struggled with, really found challenging in my life, has had to do with the ambiguity of the right thing. When is the right time to express righteous rage? And when is the right time to be patient and breathe really deeply and be curious and listen? When is the right time to insist that your way is the right way? And when is the right time to back away and actually watch what other people do and see if you can learn something from what they're doing? When is the right time to insist on what you feel like is really justifiably, objectively fair and right for most people? It is not always easy to tell, and that's hard. The times when it's easy, even if what you're about to do is really hard, at least you know in your soul that it's the right thing. But if you don't know and you have to take that chance, that is really hard. So that's my answer.
To that, the first one is grief, dealing with grief. Yeah, dealing with grief, I think is definitely the hardest. The other part to that too, I think that also makes sense for me, and I'm more realizing it, is more identity based. It's this idea of like fitting in versus belonging. I've moved a lot. I've had like a very diverse upbringing, and I find myself in places where I'm just like trying to fit into the norm. And I know everyone can feel that sense. I don't know if you want me to dive into like the different aspects of that.
If you want.
Yeah, like I could talk on both, but I'll start with this one. Is so like, I don't know where to begin. I'll start here. Yeah, like I think I grew up in Phoenix, predominantly Hispanic neighborhood schools, and I think I was one of very few, Asian Americans there. So I felt like early on I felt this way. But I've kind of just adopted, Mexican, Hispanic culture in a lot of ways, foods, Christmas, Thanksgiving, going to their houses, and I'm used to eating like tamales during Thanksgiving, and it's something I really, really love. So I felt like early on that seed was planted, but probably the biggest one is this. I went to a high school that was a private Jesuit, high paying tuition school, kind of elites of Phoenix, and I did not grow up in that setting. I was very, very lucky to go there. My mom, she was actually the housekeeper of the president of the school. And so I got to go to the school for free. It'd be like, not the equivalent of being a housekeeper for Russell than being able to go to a school like this, but that's pretty much what it was. And so I was at a school that had a lot of, privilege, wealth, things like that. And of course, it's hard to kind of fit in there. I wasn't the only person that came from low income, but there's very, very few of us. But already, and the other part too is like I was I was raised Buddhist, and this was a Catholic school, and so there was like a lot of things that were very, very different for me. But I just always kind of want to fit in, so you're just doing the things. And yeah, so I feel like that's been a recurring theme. It comes up now because I think I've moved around. I've lived in Brazil, I've lived in India, Netherlands, Hong Kong, and now I'm here. And I've just feel like I've just molded to all these places. So when I'm in Brazil, not to stereotype Brazilians, but like I fell into those type of things, and
And any place I went to, I just feel like I've tried to take on a little bit of that identity, and through that, I kind of now have a broad range of identities. I just feel very, very global about things. But now that I'm back into the U.S., like, I feel like that global international part of me is gone, and now I'm just like being an American here. And so, but I say all that because I'm here at GDS, and all these places. I should say this: like, I've always had loving, caring, welcoming people. Like, be with us, we love you. It's not been like, I've never had like something like that. So I feel that like very much like that at GDS. But if I'm being really, really real, I don't see myself here a long time just because I always move. But the question is, I don't know where I'm going next. I don't know if that's back to Arizona. That's what I want it to be because that's where my friends are. I have a brother who lives there. And this will tie back with what I said earlier about grief. So this idea of belonging and fitting, it's become clearer to me, I think, because I'll just say it. So the hardest part is the grief. The hardest part is, sorry.
Take your time.
Yeah. Is anyone else getting emotional in there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was all like, I didn't want to just like be the one sobbing.
And if you want, we can.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I also on the side, I really love the project. I think it's really, really cool. I feel, so I told myself, like, I want to be honest. I want to be real. I want to be truthful. So the hardest thing is my mom passing away. It was just sudden, unexpected. Of course, no one knows how to deal with these things. I don't know how to deal with it. I still don't know how to deal with it, but it's just hard, I guess, but I'm trying to like make a point of this that I don't want to say, so without getting too much into everything, but so this was about 5-6 years ago, and that I was in Amsterdam, living in Amsterdam at the time. I moved to Hong Kong. I felt like I just needed fresh start of everything. But nonetheless, dealing with the grief has been the hardest because it's weird because I feel this emotion now, I feel this pain now, but I like that feeling. It's like I like to feel hurt by it, so it's kind of a weird thing to go through because you like feeling that feeling because it actually brings you closer. And the hard part is like it doesn't matter how long it's been, I'll get like this every single time, like 100% of the time. Like I this is why I actually try to avoid talking about it or never bring it up, because like even speaking about it, like words like saying, my mom is versus was, and just like there's all these little things that just like bring this intense emotion.
Comparing things, especially calamity, difficulty, challenge, is not easy. I suppose at different stages of my life, I have encountered difficulty. When I was very young, my parents divorced, and it was a tumultuous divorce. When I was older, I went through divorce, and that had its own ghosts that I had to parse through. when professionally, one of the hardest moments that I've encountered has been actually closing a school and seeing the disintegration of a community unfold in front of me. And that's really why I ended up at GDS, because I had been working at a school that, due to the pandemic, lost its funding. It was a startup, and it had some pretty high-minded global ambitions, but the funding for the school dried up. And to witness and to bear witness to a community falling apart was not easy. I got back up in a couple of ways. I have a pretty consistent spiritual practice. I serve as a priest, a Zen Buddhist priest, and I leaned on that practice. And one of the phrases that we use in the practice is, fall 7 times, get up 8. So you will face a lot of calamity in your life, and you have to get up, dust off, and keep walking. And growth continues. In fact, growth is what characterizes being alive. I think that as a result of facing deep challenges, I've become a lot more compassionate toward the people around me, and also toward actually the real challenge has been to be compassionate toward myself, because I am very persistent and determined, and I hold myself to pretty high standards. And sometimes being kind to myself is not easy to do. That's a lesson in and of itself. But I think that overcoming adversity in general is a great teacher. And I don't think any of us will get through life without facing adversity. And there's joy that is experienced on the other side of adversity, and understanding that our life is finite, and that none of us are getting out of here alive, means that those moments of joy are that much sweeter when you experience them in relation to great difficulty.
Best. I don't know what else to say. I've said it all by now.
That's a good outro.
There you go.
I do starting lineups, I don't do ending lineups.
It's Ishmael, and he says, God keep me from ever completing anything. Nay, this whole book is but a draft of a draft. Something like that.
I just hope that, my piece of advice is, if you have an opportunity to do something different, don't be afraid to do it. Go for it. Because those are the best experiences I've had in life, are times when I've gone outside my comfort zone.
Be good to each other.
If you love someone, care about someone, tell them that. I don't think it ever gets old. I think it's always nice to hear, or give that person a hug. I didn't do these things. I also, part of it's upbringing. I didn't grow up in a very touchy-feely, expressive way. So we showed that differently, but nonetheless, I would tell myself those things are important, regardless of culture. They're important to me now. And so, yeah, I would say express the love and joy to the people that you feel that towards.
The pain of parting is nothing to the joy of meeting again.
There's this, my 9th grade history teacher, a woman named Jan Davis, gave me this poem from Kipling called If, and there's this great line, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, and the idea being there are going to be days when you kill it, and don't get used to it, because you're not always going to be kill it, and there are going to be days when things are just not going well, and that's also just that's temporary. And so see it as temporary. Don't sort of make it, this is my whole life, and you'll be okay.
It's a big world out there, and things will happen. Some that are awesome and some that are not. And there is still so much joy in this world.
After you watch this video, Quest Night will begin.